What's up, pals? Welcome back to the channel, and boy do I have something for you today. That's right, we're coming at you with our first video in our build guides, and this one is special. Now, I discovered Berserk by accident a ways back and haven't been able to stop thinking about it. It's hands down one of my favorite mangas, and Guts is definitely one of my favorite manga characters, and in true FromSoft fashion, we can build him. Now, surely this has been done to death, but I just can't help myself, so today I am bringing you a guide to build Guts at 125 and at level 150. And if you like this kind of content, don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you want to see more, let me know in the comments down below. I'm looking to do all sorts of different types of cosplay builds or just straight up builds, so if there's like a weapon or a character you want to see come to life, you just let me know and we'll get her going. So for Guts, I am giving you 4 versions, and these are really just kind of like a palette swap kind of. The build's going to be largely the same, but we're going to be switching his armor and equipment around a little bit to make the different versions that we see of Guts in the manga and in the movies and stuff. So we're going to go with the Golden Age, the Band of the Hawk, the Black Swordsman, and the Berserker armor Guts. We can do all of these, and it's going to be pretty awesome. Alright, so strap in and let's get down to brass tacks. From a stat perspective, there won't be any real variation unless you decide to change things up a little bit. Go ahead and experiment, find a way for this build to work for you, but we've got you covered in terms of like the Fashion Souls element for sure. As for the starting class, we are choosing Vagabond for a couple of reasons. First, this starting class has a good starting vigor for your early game shenanigans, as well as a high strength and dexterity. While dex isn't as important to this build, we will need to invest a couple of points for some of our equipment, so having naturally high dex will make things easier for us in the long run. Second, the Vagabond armor is perfect for Golden Age Guts, so it saves us some time in getting a full cosplay put together. We may run into some issues with equip load, but we can get talismans to help us out with that relatively early on. So with that all said, let's talk about level 125 for a moment. Now, Vigor is set to our soft cap at 60 since, well, it's our soft cap, and this will allow us to transition into PvP pretty well. It's almost a requirement for that, but honestly, most of my builds go for 60 Vigor anyway, just because I like to hit soft caps. Also, as a melee build, being a bit more tanky allows us to get up in our enemies' faces more often. Mind is our dump stat. We're not really looking to do any casting, but we will be utilizing our Ash of War often, especially with the Black Swordsman and Berserker Guts. We're going to want at least a small investment here. Endurance is the primary of our core stats. We need to wear and carry some heavy gear, and I don't mind the larger stamina pool for attacking and dodging. I have strength set to 61 since we will be using the Star Scourge heirloom, so our overall strength will be at 66. And we'll primarily be two-handing our weapons, so we're going to consider this a solid 99. We're hitting the hard cap for strength there. Dex is set to 16, so we can utilize the pulley crossbow in different versions later on. This is why we picked the Vagabond, because the Vagabond has 13 Dex naturally, so it's only 3 points into Dex, whereas with something like the hero starting class, we would have to invest more into that stat in order to use this equipment specifically. Talismans are really up to you and how you plan to utilize this build, of course with the exception of like the Star Scourge heirloom. In PvP, you should be looking to use the Crimson Amber Medallion +2 and the Erdtree's Favor +2, and you'll have one free slot to experiment with, but really, if you're just, all of these things are really up to you. I'm just kind of suggesting what you could do here. For my free slot, I decided to go with the Carrion Filigreed Crest for parts of the build to help with FP costs on the Ash of War, but when we're doing things like using Lion's Claw and stuff later on, we'd probably want to go for like Shard of Alexander or something just to have that extra damage boost there. And then of course, if you go with the Black Swordsman or Berserker armor, you may want to opt for like the Greatjar's Arsenal to help out with the equip load a little bit. The Erdtree's Favor +2 will do that as well, so just keep that in mind. We have a pretty decent endurance, so we might not need to double down on like increasing equip load too much, but if you're running into a hard time like hitting that requirement, then Greatjar's Arsenal is probably your best bet. At 150, you can expect to see largely the same build, and you do have a few options. You can opt to increase your strength to 80, but since we'll likely be two-handing at this level anyway, I suggest you just shoot for 66 so we can free up a talisman slot. Now you do have an option to kind of like add some utility to the build. You could go for, say, like intelligence, and that way you can use the Royal Greatsword, which is another like a Guts look-alike sword, and it's pretty cool, but you don't get a whole lot of utility out of that stat investment otherwise. Like, I don't think you can really use a whole lot of spells. Not that you should be anyway, because Guts doesn't really use spells. So, but I chose to invest in a Faith, at least enough to use things like Golden Vow, and we're really just looking to increase our overall damage output for PvP and co-op play. That gives us a little bit of like utility for our friends when we play together, or if we're just trying to like maximize our damage in the Coliseum or something. But we're not really looking to use any of the other Faith spells. I mean, like, obviously it's up to you if you want to try that, but in terms of like the Guts build overall, we're just kind of trying to up our damage a little bit. Finally, the last few points to reach 150 go into Mind to account for any spells we might cast or any Ashes of War that we may choose to use down the line. So we just want to have like, we don't want to like focus on Mind, but we want to have at least a little bit of an investment there at both of these level caps so that we can make use of the tools that we have at our disposal. As far as the physic, I leave it up to player preference, but a slight recommendation would be something like the Leaden Hard tier, the Opaline Hard tier, or the Spike Crack tier. Any combination of those three would be pretty good. Or you can take any of these three and mix it with something else. That's why I leave this to player preference. I'm not really one to tell you how to mix your physic. Guts is a relatively simple build to put together, since he's basically just a pure strength build. The real fun is bringing the character to life, so let's start with our Golden Age and Band of the Hawk versions, because the only real difference here is what you choose to wear. For this version, we will be using the heavy Zweihander, notably because Guts at this point in the story doesn't have the Dragon Slayer blade just yet, but he does have a pretty big blade, and I want to keep the meme alive. You can find the Zweihander at the Isolated Merchant in southern Weeping Peninsula, and it can be purchased for 3,500 runes. As for the Ash of War, it's entirely up to you. I went with Barbaric Roar because I like the heavy attack moveset with the buff active. Lion's Claw is really good. Honestly, you could just go to town and just pick whatever you want for Ash of War. These are just kind of suggestions. If you are playing for the 150 build, the Clawmark Seal is probably your best bet since it will scale off strength in addition to faith. So for our gear, I go with no helmet, or you can just use the helm that comes with a Vagabond class. The chest is the Vagabond Knight's armor, and I went with either the Carrion Knight's greaves or the Preceptor's trousers, as Golden Age Guts doesn't necessarily wear plated greaves at this point, so it's more of like leather pants or something, I guess. At least from like the art in the movies. You know, I think that's how it works. You can really do whatever you want here, and you can keep the Vagabond Knight's gloves as well. Now for the Band of the Hawk, we are simply going to just switch out the chest for the Radahn's Lion armor. I experimented a little bit. I think the Raging Wolf leggings are pretty good. The Carrion Knight's greaves still look pretty nice with it, or the Preceptor's trousers still look good. The Vagabond Knight's gloves actually look good with this. I like the fact that it has like on his like primary hand, the right hand, he doesn't actually have any armor on it. It's just kind of like wraps, which is, honestly, I think it just kind of makes sense, you know? But either way, that's all we're really doing here. We're just trying to like get the look, right? Because when Guts is in the Band of the Hawk, he's a much more successful mercenary, so he can afford like better armor and stuff, and that's kind of what we're doing here. The Black Swordsman is where we really get into the good shit. To start, we will be looking to use the Great Sword over the Zweihander, or this is like our Dragon Slayer blade. And for this version, I opted to use the Lion's Claw Ash of War, since it looks like Guts can effortlessly swing the blade with it, and it does some pretty mad damage. This is also one of those scenarios where you probably want to swap out a talisman for the Shard of Alexander, so that we can get some extra damage on the Lion's Claw. We will also be carrying the pulley crossbow with us, and we will also have the jar cannon with us. At our current like stat investment, it's hard for us to carry both the sword and the jar cannon, so you kind of have to decide which one you want to use, or you have to be ready to go unequip the jar cannon after you fire it or something, so you can actually roll. But it's fun. We don't get a badass prosthetic that does both, but we can come as close as we can to emulating the idea. For our armor, we will be using the Knight's Cavalry set without the helm. You can get this set from the nice cavalry boss fight in the consecrated snowfields. It's a tough fight, but it's totally worth the drip. And finally, for the Berserker armor, we are only really going to change a couple of things. First, we're going to want to get the full Malekith set after we defeat him, and you can choose whether or not you wear the helm here, but if you do, the Malekith helm works fine, and so does the wolf mask, because when, he starts to look like a beast in that armor, and that's kind of the idea. I think these are all like pretty pretty hardcore Berserk references in this game, and in fact, there's a whole bunch, but finally, we are going to switch up the Ash of War on the Great Sword of the Bloodhound Steppe. This will give the impression that the armor is elevating our strength and speed to a degree, and we're going to look pretty badass while doing so, and that's kind of like what the Berserker armor does. Overall, these versions all function the same in terms of PvE. We're looking to get up in the boss's face and start smacking them around, and we're going to make sure to take advantage of like charged attacks and jump attacks to consistently break enemy poise. For the most part, we can wear pretty heavy gear, so our damage absorption will naturally be high and allows us to stay in the fight a little bit longer. And in co-op, we're essentially just the tank. We're taking aggro and putting out serious damage while giving our pals time to do things they maybe normally wouldn't have time to do. And at the end of the day, this is a cosplay build, so have some fun with it and experiment a little bit. Also, does anybody else know the very obvious reference to the God Hand in this game? Tell me in the comments down below, and don't forget to subscribe. This has been Alpal. Be kind, be safe, spread the love, and we'll see you next time. Peace.